The prospect that Scotland could vote for independence has certainly unsettled financial markets. It's reckoned to have contributed to the slide in the pound and wobbles in the prices of Scottish-based firms. This is just a short-term reaction to the uncertainty of the outcome, says John Kay, an economist who's not so worried about the economic consequences of independence.
Markets don't like uncertainty, and this is just a new and unexpected factor for people to have to cope with in their decision-making. I'm not sure it'll be business as usual because people will have a lot of adjusting and rethinking to do if there is a yes vote. But once people realise the implications, and actually that the economic implications are not that great, I think things will settle down.
Of course, other economists are less relaxed about the long-term consequences of a yes vote. But what is for certain is that Friday is going to be a busy day at the Bank of England, particularly if Scotland does vote yes. Here to talk us through the bank's to-do list, whichever way the vote goes, is a man who was at the very heart of the bank. Sir John Geeve was Deputy Governor between 2006 and 2009. So first off, Sir John, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. What time do you think the team will be getting into work on Friday?
I think they'll be there very early, certainly there for the result. And their first priority, of course, is to calm markets in the initial aftermath. Nothing changes. It's only a decision to change in future. But nonetheless, there's bound to be some uncertainty, some possibility of deposit flight, and, of course, some further marking down of the pound and the UK generally.
So what could they do to kind of calm people in this kind of period of uncertainty?
Well, on the deposit flight, they can work with the banks to make sure that cash is recycled. This is all within the UK, or mainly within the UK. Make sure the ATMs are full, make sure there are plenty of notes everywhere, make sure that banks' internet systems work, and so you don't get the sort of panic that developed with Northern Rock. And since people will mainly be transferring money within one state, Britain, which will still exist, that will be a largely mechanical exercise. The other thing, I think, on the pound and on the more general question about stability of the economy, they'll be looking to use persuasion, I think, in the first instance, rather than any market interventions. They certainly don't want to be forced into the position of moving rates or even, I suspect, intervening in support of the pound.
Now, Alex Salmond has, of course, said he wants a currency union. The main parties in Westminster have said that's not going to happen. So what role will the bank play in negotiating a currency deal or making an arrangement for sterlingisation? This is the idea where Scotland would use sterling without this formal agreement. What would the bank's role be in all of that?
Well, the bank will be an advisor in that. I mean, the bank is a creature of Westminster. It's accountable through the government, the Treasury, to the Westminster Parliament, and it will be advising them on what is a sustainable solution. And I think its main objective will be to avoid setting up, if you like, an unbalanced and unsustainable union, which will run into the sort of problems that the Euro's run into.
So you don't think a currency union would work?
I think it could work. I think, as I think Mark Carney said, it requires a very close coordination of economic policy. So it would be, firstly, from the Scottish point of view, a real diminishment of sovereignty, because a lot of economic policy would remain in London. So that's one disadvantage. But secondly, it would get uncomfortable for both the rest of the UK and Scotland if the economies begin diverging more than they diverge at present. And that could well happen. So active management would be necessary to sort of keep it together. So a currency union requires less transfer of sovereignty and more coordination than I think will be comfortable.
And of course the economics of that is contested. Let's move on now to a no vote. Presumably it'll be a quieter morning because in the short term at least everything stays the same, doesn't it?
Yes, I think everyone would heave a sigh of relief in transition terms.
You mean
Obviously,
everyone at the
Bank of England? Yeah, everyone at the Bank of England. Yes, I think. I don't think there'd be great problems there.
OK, and finally, we get the minutes of September's Monetary Policy Committee meeting later today. What do you think they're going to tell us about when we're likely to see an interest rate rise? The August minutes, of course, showed the first split over interest rates for 3 years.
I'm not expecting them to tell us very much more. I don't think there'll be much of a change this time. Perhaps a third vote for change. It's still going to be either just before Christmas or just after.
Right, you sound very confident about that. So John Geeve, former Deputy Governor of the Bank of England, thank you very much indeed. Now, Phones for You's 550 shops remain shuttered, but it seems that the companies that brought about the businesses or helped bring about the business's demise may now be poised to buy parts of the company. Laura Lambie is Senior Investment Director at Investec Wealth and Investment, and she joins me now from our Glasgow studio. Phones for You went into administration because the mobile phone operators stopped doing business through the company. Now it seems they want to buy parts of it up. What's happening?
Perhaps not surprising. Both EE and Vodafone had been approached by Phones for You earlier this year, looking for to be taken over. They refused that. They since cut their supplies, and now they're looking to pick up assets on the cheap. On a positive note, however, if stores remain open and stock is recycled, then the employees that currently work for Phones for You, some of these positions will be safe. So good news on the employment front.
And what do you give the odds? Do you think they will kind of buy up parts of the business?
It wouldn't surprise me, certainly. They're in a good position to pick up assets at reasonably cheap prices. So I can see that going through. Dixon's Carphone are also sniffing about, looking to see what they can pick up too. So yes, as I say, good news on the job front.
Now, we heard what Sir John Geeve had to say about the prospect of interest rate rises here in Britain. Today, there's a meeting of the US Central Bank, the Federal Reserve. Do you think we'll get any signal from there about how close the Fed is to raising interest rates?
I think Wall Street was up yesterday on the prospect that there is not going to be any change in interest rates going up. We also had the VIX index, that's the index that measures volatility.
The so-called fear index, some people call it.
The fear index, yes. And that was down too. So I suspect there'll be little change. Interestingly enough, what we might see in the UK, because of the Scottish referendum, we actually might see the anticipated rise in interest rates, which I think most commentators think is going to be in the first quarter of next year. That actually might be pushed out a bit, simply because of the uncertainties being caused by the referendum.
Well, we'll see. Laura Lambie of Investec Wealth and Investment, thank you very much indeed. Now, we hear a lot about how in the future all sorts of objects and devices will be able to communicate with each other. It is known as the Internet of Things, and the idea is that everything from your central heating to parking spaces, even farm animals, and apparently your coffee cup could be connected via computer chips. And one of the companies which aims to make that happen is Arm Holdings. Arm designs the microprocessors found in chips and is one of Britain's most successful tech firms. The microprocessors it designs are in almost every smartphone. The company's boss, Simon Segars, joins me in the studio now, fresh from an event at the Science Museum last night, which brought together key players from the industry to discuss the future of this Internet of Things. So, Simon, first of all, give me an idea. What might this mean for us? How might it change our lives? What sort of stuff can it do beyond just, adjusting the heating in our home from our mobile phones?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of examples of Internet of Things applications which are very consumer-oriented. You know, you mentioned the coffee cup. There's forks out there.
Yeah, hold on. Well, with the coffee cup, why on earth would you want a chip in your coffee cup?
Well, I don't know, but maybe, if it's telling you that you're consuming too much caffeine in your day, then, perhaps if you've got a coffee addiction...
So send a message to your phone saying this is your third cup, ease off on the coffee.
Yeah, there are numerous devices that can help you track your lifestyle, and through apps on your phone will give you some guidance.
You said there's a fork already out there?
Yeah, there is a fork that will basically monitor how fast you're eating and, encourage you to chew your food properly before you swallow it. I mean, there are lots of these things out there. And at one level, you might think, well, who really wants one of these? But It's actually, I think it's great that you see so much experimentation with these products because they're, relatively.
But they
easy to put
do
together.
sound, these ideas, a little bit frivolous. I mean, are there more serious applications? Are there places where
Absolutely.
this sort of stuff's being tested?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are many applications in terms of healthcare, in energy management, in transportation, in dealing with the issues that come from mass urbanisation. With so many people moving to cities, we're obviously living in more crowded spaces, and people just moving around needs more active management.
So there's a trial in Milton Keynes at the moment which gives an idea of the kind of thing that might happen. What are they doing in Milton Keynes?
Yeah, it's great that the government has sponsored some of these smart city trials, and in Milton Keynes they've set up a network of connectivity so that people can try different things. There are parking spaces, so from an app you can find out where the nearest free parking space is. The rubbish bins on the street are hooked up so that instead of a truck having to drive around to every one to see if they're full, you can just go to the ones that actually are full and need emptying. And that creates efficiencies, which really we're going to need more of.
And how does ARM come into this? How are you going to make all this happen?
Well, as you said at the beginning, we design microprocessors. We license them to semiconductor companies who are going to build the chips that form the network, that form the sensors that all this data is kind of gathered from. And our licensees are doing some really creative work to make these chips really small, really low power, and very low cost, so that you can literally deploy tens of billions of them.
And very, very briefly, how big a market is this going to be?
Well, for us, it's going to drive many, many units of ARM-based chips in the sensors. It's going to drive greater deployment of technology in the network and in the cloud as well. So for us, it's a great big opportunity.
Simon Segars, Chief Executive of ARM Holdings, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.